We have tonight Summer Smith. Summer works with Wise County GIS. She's also a local cattle farmer, hay producer. She's been on our Extension Leadership Council and is officially a drone pilot and has done some drone programming for us and has been featured in various magazines and news outlets with her drone work. And she's going to talk to us about drones in agriculture. So I'm going to pull up her presentation here, and then I'm going to go monitor this from another computer. And you should be, let's see. Okay, you should be good to go. I think you can just hit the space bar or the backspace like you said.
Okay, space or backspace to go front and forward?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I don't see any faces. Am I gonna? Do I see faces?
Not unless you want to.
Well, I kind of
You're
like.
better off if you don't see
If
it.
I don't, you don't want me to see your faces? I'd like to know who I'm talking to. I know I've done several of these
Okay.
with Phil, this preparedness series we've done, and I'm always curious to know a name with a face. I remember faces better. So, as Phil already said, my name is Summer, and I'll give you a little bit of background. I really fell into drones on accident. I was in the GIS office one day, and my supervisor came through and said, Mountain Empire's opening this program. And I was like, gosh, that's so cool. And she was like, you want to go? And I was like, well, yeah, can I? And she was like, yep, you got 5 minutes. Let's go. So I loaded up and I went, and that was 2 years ago. And here I am now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about drones in agriculture. And what interested me, the first thing about drones was, you know, I have a cattle farm and there's a lot of hills and ridges around here. And I thought, now, if I had one of those gadgets that I could fly, that would be so much easier than hiking that ground. So as I played with them, and I bought a couple of small ones, and I could see that bird's eye view, and it was just a completely better image all the way around. You just had that much more detail. And then my interest grew, and here I am. I missed a infrared camera class because of the COVID-19 in Hazard in April, which I'm anxious to get to go to when they open things back up, which will be later in the program. So, but that's where your value is in your camera. So I started out with just a little bit of basic definition, because a lot of people, you know, they think of a drone and they're not really exactly sure. Is it just this new gadget, whatever? But actually it's really been around since World War II. And of course, you know, when you go to get your license, it's a UAS or a UAV, which is an unmanned aerial vehicle or system that you're operating. So there's a little bit of history about exactly how drones came to be, and now they seem to be common practice. More and more people are using them. There are very strict laws. Those aviation laws are just now actually being written. The fines are very steep if you go outside the laws and the restrictions, but you can apply for specific waivers to do specific things. So you do have some free reign on your agenda or on your flight pattern. However, if you fly and you produce a product for anything other than personal use, you can be fined by the FAA. And it's pretty steep. I think it's about $15,000 an instance. So I started out and didn't realize that, and just had a toy. But then once I started using it in my farming practice, and you know, I make money on my farm, then that kicks back and it can bite you. So let's get to what we're here for. So the top ways, and I found 6 common uses that are being used across the United States. Not all of them are being used in air region. A lot of them are on larger farms out west, but I think about 4 of them are being used in the Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Southwest Virginia region. So the first one is soil and field analysis. So anybody that knows anything about farming, you've got these crop cycles, okay? And you're planting them, and then it's the growth pattern, and then it's the product. Well, during that process, there's it's like I said before, it's a whole system. It's an unmanned system. So you've got what kind of drone is best for what kind of flight you're trying or data you're trying to absorb. And so you have your drone and you have the data you need, and then you have to have the software to produce the results of the data. Okay, so if, for example, on the soil and field analysis, mapping, like my favorite is Pix4D, and you program, it's all autonomous. So you program it, it'll take off, it'll fly a pattern. Now my batteries last about 20 to 25 minutes. They say 30, but at 20 minutes, depending on how big, and I use it for hay fields right now. So depending on how large my hayfield is and my flight time and how far away it's going to be from me, you have to calculate, well, it's going to take it 5 minutes to get back to me. So you have to make sure that you calculate that in on your battery time. But the neat thing to that is, everybody says, well, you're not going to get a whole lot of ground covered in 20 minutes, but it's pre-programmed. So when you launch that, and it starts its flight grid pattern, which I'll show you a picture of in a minute, then when it detects when its battery is at, like I have it set at 20%. When it starts at 20%, it will come home, turn itself, set down right where it launched. I can turn it off, replace its battery, hit resume, and it'll go right back to that same spot and pick up that grid pattern again. So I have enough to do about 2 hours without having to recharge my battery. I have 4 batteries. So that's how you kind of get around that obstacle. But the soil and the field analysis, okay, so if you've got this massive cornfield and you have an infrared camera or just a spectrometer or something of that nature, what it does is it will detect the heat coming off of the individual kinds of weeds or the individual kinds of soil. It can let you know if it's what mineral deficient it is, So if you have an area over here and you've done your crop rotation and you have an area on one side that is lacking in one mineral, but maybe on the other side of the field you have plenty of that mineral, but you're lacking in another mineral. So that's going to save you, rather than walking that field, which is going to take hours to take soil samples, and it's not going to be near as precise as the data that you're going to collect from that bird's view's eye. Then you've saved your time. You're time efficient. You've saved your monetary in your resources. Okay, I didn't need 3 tons of nitrogen. I just needed 1, or whatever the case may be. So that's the soil side of it. I'll move on to the next one. I have 6. There's your example by what I mean by, if you're mineral deficient here or maybe water deficient somewhere else. So the next one is seed planting. Now we don't have any of that in this region, but they do out west. And I think there's some in Arkansas and maybe some flatter states out there. But seed planting, you have a larger drone, much larger drone, and they usually use roto motors, which means that they have multiple motors, or there's also a fixed wing that's usually for fertilizer spreading or hydration. But So seed planting, and I have pictures with all of this to give you an idea of what it is. You're going to put that, on the back of a tractor, and you're going to broadcast your seed, or you're going to broadcast your fertilize. Well, you can only get so precise with that. But if you say you want to plant a tree every 20 feet or every 30 feet, you can pre-program a drone, and you get special FAA waivers to carry certain weights. And then you can pre-program that drone to drop that tree sapling every so many feet. And you just stand over there and watch it. So, and you'll see the example that I have in a minute. It's a cone-shaped type of dropping, so it just drops into the ground. Hopefully, theoretically, and out there it does. You do have to do some work on the ground and soften the ground and so forth to make it work right. There is some kind of time invested in that. It's not just as simple as flying that drone and it plants your tree. There's some prep work, but rather than having to walk, 400 acres, then you just fly and it will plant it for you. I'll show you what I mean. You see the cone, and the tree is in the cone. Okay. So now we go to crop spraying and spot spraying. And my worst enemy right now is ironweed. And I couldn't tell you what the technical term of that is, but it is a nuisance for me. So I get on my side-by-side. I have a big sprayer in the back. I drive all over the pasture and I spot spray. That takes hours. You run out of spray, you go back to the barn, you remix, you start over. By the time you get back to the barn, if you didn't leave a marker, you lost your place, which is okay if you sprayed it twice. But then if you, financially, you could save just a little bit more, and you could save a little bit more time. So this product the drone, same grid pattern, it will spot spray, and that camera will detect by the heat that certain weed gives off. It will detect exactly where that is and spray it. Then it moves on to the next one and the next one and the next one, and it does a grid. Or if you have, say you have a massive potato patch, and you have a fungus or something break out on them, but it's only in one section, and you've flown your grid and you figure out, it's in the southwest corner. So you just fly your drone and it just sprays where it detects the heat of that fungus rather than the whole patch. Okay, show you an example of that. Okay. A lot of land surveyors are starting to use drones for their surveying, and the reason is the accuracy and the precision, because the satellites that the drones pick up can pick up to 4 inches, thousands and hundreds and millions of feet in the air. Okay, so they can pick that up rather than just beating your way through some kind of bogged down grown up area. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's clear, but you still have to walk the ground. So a lot of land surveyors are using this, as well as crop rotation is a big thing. You've planted your corn in one place, you've planted your beans here, you've planted your other vegetables in various places. Well, any farmer knows you have to rotate those crops to get the most and the best and the largest amount, well, that's a lot of area to cover and a lot of spots to test that ground. This can tell you also by the nutrient that we spoke of just earlier, exactly which way you should rotate your crops and where is the best you can pick up if it's low lying or if it's water deficient or if it's like a really dry area or a really wet area, and maybe that can tell you exactly what is the best crop to grow in that spot. You can also monitor and log your crop progression as it grows and its life cycle. So if you log that this year, okay, you've got so many weeks of your pumpkins this year. Well, next year when you go to fly it, before you plant it, you can make sure that you have the right soil type to grow that in, and then you can make sure that you put down the right fertilize or herbicide or spectricide or whatever you need to make sure that you maximize your product. So time-wise, financial-wise, any resource-wise, it's just more, it's more precise and there's not near as much guesswork involved. Plus you have real-time data. You know, a lot of times people pay big bucks to either go out in a vehicle to gather this information, or you might even pay somebody to go up in a helicopter or a small airplane to gather this information, and that can be extremely expensive. So this way, you know, they might fly it, you might not get the data for 2 or 3 weeks. You fly it today, you've got your data tonight. You run your software and it's there, and you know what to do tomorrow. And there's an example of the grid that I referred to earlier. So I mentioned just now about irrigation. Okay, what if you have a low-lying area and you need to run a drain line, or you need to ditch it, or maybe you need to fill it in, or you know, there's all kinds of possibilities there, which goes back to the infrared camera I was talking about, and I missed that class. For my job, part of my job, I work with the EOC of Wise County, and we have had a lot of rain lately. The camera that I'm interested in learning how to use, and hopefully we can purchase, maybe have to share with a couple of counties, can tell me where underground water is up to 2 feet. So where that water is moving. That will help us with our mudslides and our rock slides. That's on my job side, but that's also on the farm side. You know, what if you have some ground that doesn't perk? You might need to figure out a better way to irrigate it. This can help you, short of bringing in an engineer. This can minimize your time and your money, and I know I've said that and it's redundant, but that's really why I got into it, because it is a good size investment in the beginning, but the payoff in the long run, it pays for itself in the first year. And that's an example of, you can see the infrared camera and how it shows the red is actually lots of water. So you have pooling areas, and it would drown your corn if you did that, or most any plant really. And it wouldn't make much for a hay field either. And that, I refer to that because that's what I do. So vegetables and cattle, that's what I know. So, but I'm sure it can be applicable in, you know, any farming, agriculture related field. So the last way, and this is the way I use it the most, is real-time livestock monitoring. So if I have a mama and I haven't seen her for a day or two and I know she's expecting, then now I have some wooded areas, but they're usually along the edge. So I can fly that drone around those open spaces rather than getting out and beating the bushes all hours of the day and night looking for that new baby. Also, if you think you have a lame one, you can fly. Now, FAA says you can only fly from dusk till dark, but you can apply and acquire a waiver to be able to fly after dark. I also use it for my fence lines. If I have had, and we've had a lot of high winds lately, so if I don't, want to walk to the back pasture, then I can fly that drone over there and check that fence line to see if I have any downed limbs or any problems over there. And then in a matter of 5 minutes, I can assess the situation with the drone and determine, well, I need 3 fence posts. I better grab the clips. I need a hammer. I need a chainsaw. I need, rather than you go out there, oh gosh, I found it. Now I have to go back, get my stuff, and then I'll go back and work on it. And there's an example of the infrared and the cattle. So there are 2 types of drones. There are fixed wing and there are rotor. And it's like a quadcopter, or sometimes you have 6, or sometimes you have 8. And each different type is best in certain areas. So a fixed wing usually carries fertilized water, anything you want to mass drop. Or if you want to mass, I look at, when I compare it to people, when I try to explain it to people, it's kind of like the difference between a 0-turn mower and a regular mower. So a fixed wing is like a regular mower. It can't cut real sharp. Your wind is going to catch your wings, So if you're going around in that typical circle like you do with a mower, playing a regular lawnmower, riding mower, that's your fixed wing. So if you're doing basic broadcast, that's your best choice. There are 3, and I have references in the back, 3 that I have heard a lot of really, really good things about. I know the Trimble is the most pricey, but I also know that we use a lot of Trimble products at work, and that's very good. And the honeycomb, I don't know much about the Centera, the Phoenix, but I do know that the Ag Drone and the Trimble both are very good units. And then you have a multi-rotor. So this is what I use. And I have the DJI. I have a Phantom 4 Pro. Now the Precision Hawk, I really would like to have one of those. It has 6, and it is lighter weight, but as strange as that sounds, it does not get caught by the wind. It's spread out like, you'll see in a minute, my Phantom is very compact, boxy, and the wind gusts just tear it. It just goes down if there are high wind gusts. But now the Precision Hawk, it's more like a spider. So, your arms are out and its limbs are much more narrow. And so it's able to weather the wind a lot better. I put a little bit, I know more about the multi-rotor. I'm not very good with a fixed wing. They're very challenging. And like I said, the Phantom 4 Pro is what I have. I will stick with this, but I would like to have a Precision Hawk, and I would also like to have a Mavic. That's what our sheriff's department uses, and those are the toughest little things. I mean, they could fall from the sky, and I've seen them put them through some tough things, and they don't break very easily. The Matrice, I have only seen a few of those in training. They are fairly large, about, I want to say 3 by 3 feet and on up to like 5 by 5, 6 by 6. Their carrying capacity, the larger you go up, obviously, the more you're going to be able to carry. And they have gadgets just like lawnmowers and tractors and motorcycles, and you can soup it up, or you can downplay it. So But again, don't forget that regardless of what drone you use, it's not just that piece of machinery. It's not just that piece of equipment. It is the drone itself, the software that you use, and then how you process that software to give you the output that you want. This is these 5 I am familiar with all 4 of the or all 5 of these softwares. So Pix4D is my favorite. Precision Mapper is really good. Trimble, I haven't used Data Mapper very much, or Correlator, just occasionally. But the top 3 are my favorite. And there's your references. That's where I got all that information, if you want to go back and look. Phil, you want me to do a show and tell at this point, or what do you want? Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. How do I, well, I guess it's okay the way it is. I'm going to back up a little bit. So if you can see this, this is my backpack, okay? And it's all in this nice, neat little package. You'll do the,
Take the presentation off.
yeah. I wasn't sure how to do that.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay,
You should be able to.
okay. I might do it this way. Okay, so now I'm going to unpack this. And I'm not sure if you can see that. Can y'all see that? Okay, so it's all, you know, this is the controller. This is the unit itself. These are your propellers, your extra batteries. Okay, so this is your remote control, and this will raise up. Okay, and I raise it up like this, and I have an iPad that fits inside of that. Okay. This is the Phantom 4 Pro. Okay. This is called a gimbal. That's what your camera is called. And when you get your license, you'll learn that, you know, you have to have it has to be registered with the FAA, and you have to have insurance on it and stuff. But you'll want to do a pre-flight log and a post-flight log so that you check all of your equipment every single time. Because even at the end of the day, they're a lot of fun, but somebody could really get hurt, like if it was faulty equipment. Okay.
Amanda, have you had problems with that DJI not returning to base like you wanted it to? Because I've got one and I've tried to get it to return to base, and it will most of the time, but sometimes it's like it has a mind of its own, or there's interference and it wants to land somewhere different, and I have to manually stop it or it's going to crash.
Yes, and usually what it means, it needs its GPS coordinates updated. Like every time I fly, I go into the DJI website and do a software update. For some reason, now the Mavic does not have to have that. The Mavic, you rarely have to update it. But for some reason, this one, you just do with DJI. I don't know why. So I'm not sure how many people know that much about drones. So I'm just going to put this together for you real quick. And when I do my inspection, you know, I run my fingers over my propellers to make sure there's no cracks, no splits in it. It's a really easy procedure. You match the color with the top of the color here. And it's as simple as pushing down and twisting. And eventually it'll be just like your car. You check the oil, you check the windshield wiper fluid, you check the whatever. Okay, so this little gadget is a locator, and it's really called a Marco Polo, and it is well worth your investment for those that do not or have not heard of this. I think I paid about $300 for two, and it attaches here, and fully charged, if your drone goes down, it will find it up to 24 hours, no matter what kind of shape it's in, unless this piece has been busted. I've not seen one busted yet, though, in 2 years, and all of ours have this on it. So that would attach there. This is where your battery comes in and out. This is your tracking device for your Marco Polo. So once you turn this on, and you turn this on here, and I've tested it lots of times. You know, I set it down in the field somewhere, and then I'll have my son go and move it, and it will take it straight. It takes me straight to it every time. And then this is the iPad that I take out of this container. And it affixes like this with a cord that comes out of the iPad and goes into the back of this unit. And that's my show and tell. Does anybody have any questions?
Summer, you want me to try to share these footage videos?
Well, sure, whatever you think.
I'll see if I can get it to share here.
I would say maybe 40, maybe 35, 40 feet. Well, I don't think it would have to be, the tractor would have to be growing in the same grid as the drone. I do know some boys over in Hazard that wrote their own programming for a drone and had it tell them like a cop would tell somebody, or had it follow them because they had a tracking unit programmed in, but they had to write their own software.
Okay. Because I've heard it speculated, and I never did confirm it, that say if you had a child you're worried about, or and it was brought up as a 4-H camp application. If you have a child that you just want to keep an eye on, that you could actually track them with a.
Right. I do know there is some software out there. I don't know how accurate it is. I know it's still very new. And some of my computer geek friends are playing with their own software, open source software for it. I know that, well, I can say this, we had an FBI representative last year in Hazard, and they had some extremely expensive software for face recognition software, and they would have a drone just fly a crowd when they were looking for somebody, and they had a facial recognition software built into their drone when somebody was wanted. I do know that. I saw that. It's like, I guess they gave us an example of that.
It looks like a couple of questions here. It's from Aaron and Kurt down in Scott County. Does the FAA consider your own farm a business use when operating your drone?
Yes.
Okay.
And unless you are using that farm for only personal consumption, if any part of that goes to someone outside of someone living in that home, so like if you take your produce to a farmer's market, if you take, if you sell your hay, if you take your cattle to a beef market, if you are making money and it's for anything other than your own personal consumption.
And then the follow-up, did you have to get a commercial drone license?
Yes.
Okay, Shad, want to know where the infrared camera, where that would come from?
Well, you can order it. I mean, there are as many companies out there to order an infrared camera, as there are video cameras or cell phones. You just have to find the one that is best suits you with all the specs that you want and that is compatible with the drone that you fly. It's kind of like picking out tires for your truck. You want mud tires, you want street tires.
Then he asked, how do you rig those up?
It's just a matter of, right here, there's some teeny tiny little screws. You take this gimbal off and you just attach another one. And you download the software for that camera onto whatever device, your iPad or whatever device you're using.
And Jerry asked, will drones show up on radar?
What kind of radar?
I don't know, with a question like that, I'm gonna write Jerry's name down.
You're gonna unmute him and let him ask it himself?
I just unmuted myself. I'm just thinking about radar that picks up aircraft.
No, because with the FAA law, you're not really allowed to fly these above 4,000 feet. So unless you're, and the aviation maps that you have to learn how to read to pass your pilot's license, to pass your pilot's test, it is the same aviation maps as if you were flying a manned craft. So you have to know there's like 5 different sizes of airports in the United States. You have to know like how high you can fly around those airports, how far out you can fly. If it's a large one, you can't, it's miles and miles and miles before you could go anywhere near it. Like I live, as the crow flies, 3 miles from the airport here in Wise. Every time I fly my drone, I have to contact that radio tower. because my house is right in MedFlight's line. So you have lights on these drones here, and the front ones are red and the back ones are green. So they have to know what else is in the air. And that kind of coincides with all the new aviation laws for called Part 107. And I'm sure they're going to be very complicated, but what they're trying to develop is a highway system in the sky.
Jeremy asked the question, is that 4,000 feet in elevation or 4,000 feet above the ground?
Above the ground.
Okay, any other questions for Summer?
And you have to have special waivers for anything that high. So like your average, like I would never go that high. You know, I would never go more than 500 feet. But if I were flying professionally, you know, because you always have to have it in your line of sight. So nobody's going to see that high up in the air. So you would have to have special glasses to be able to do that. And that requires a special waiver from the FAA. So technically for me and my purposes, which I rarely get special waivers unless it's for work, to do after dark or maybe before dawn. What I do around the farm, I never apply for those. And I'm never more than a couple of 100 feet in the air. And you always need, like I always have my son with me or a friend with me, because you're never supposed to take your eyes off of that. You're liable for that. So if you had a malfunction, and like you can't fly over people, you can't fly over crowds, you have to have special waivers for all of those. You can't, you know, heavily populated areas, vehicles, things like that. You have to have special waivers for all of that. So it's very complex. That's why I just stick to farm ground.
And
Summer,
Jeremy,
I'm sorry.
I'll just, so Jeremy had asked, what's the entry level cost to buy a drone?
This one right here cost, with the extra batteries and the pack and all of that, I think it cost about $4,000. I mean, but that's the iPad, that's the Marco Polo, that's the, you know, that's the whole package. Now, you could probably just get the drone and the remote control itself for maybe $1,500, $1,800.
I got another DJI question for you. Have you had a problem with, you know, how you put a stop on it so that it maxes out at a certain elevation?
Yeah, at a certain height.
Yes.
Yes.
Have you had a problem with yours letting you blow right on past that stop without you realizing it?
No, not without a warning.
Yeah, mine did that, and I was up over 1,000 feet without realizing that I was that high. So,
Oh, you can get really high before you even know it.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I usually when I get close to that, the height that I have it set at, it starts sending off all kinds of alarms.
Have you had interference like near power lines or anything like that?
Oh yes, that is a pain in the butt. When I try to fly for work, it just will not take off. It will not. You can't get it off the ground within so many feet of a power line. I had a slide in Pound last spring, maybe last summer, that I tried to fly going into the backside of Pound, not from Wise's side, but from Kentucky's side. And there's a power line right there. And I bet I walked 100 square feet and I never could get it to take off. Now, the guy that I work with a whole lot out of Kentucky says that there is a setting I can change on the Phantom so that it won't, but you have to get special permission from, I don't think it's a waiver from FAA. I think it's special permission, but I'm not sure From who? It may be the power company. It may be the, it's some kind of, you have to let them know.
Jerry had asked about weather conditions. Do drones operate well in all weather conditions?
No, I do not fly this thing in the rain at all. I flew it for the mudslide in Crackers Neck a couple years ago. And the wind gusts, I had DMME up there with me, and the wind gusts, mine would barely hold. I couldn't get it more than about 50 or 60 feet off the ground. But now they had an Inspire. It just cut right through that wind. I would love to have an Inspire, but you're looking at about $10,000. And that's the ones that kind of look like a spider, and they're like 6 legs on it. But I flew it after I flew this one, and I didn't have any trouble at all. So I do not fly this one. It has to be less than 20 miles an hour. And of course, you've got to keep it into consideration that what's going on 500 feet in the air is not what's going on down here. Your wind is very, very, very different. And so there's a weather app that I have on my phone to check my drone, to check the weather and how high and where I'm at, and that kind of stuff. And it's pretty detailed. So, but let's see. And the Mavic can cut through the wind pretty good. Even though it's very small, I think the compactness of it just goes right through it. And it's not as bulky as this, so the wind doesn't really catch it. And even though the Inspire is larger, much, much larger, probably 3 times that big, its parts are skinny, and the wind just does not, the motor is stronger, and I didn't have any trouble in the wind in it. I'm sorry?
What about low temperatures? What's the lowest temperature you've flown?
I don't fly under freezing. Because again, 32 degrees down here is much colder 500 feet in the air. So I don't fly below 32 degrees. And another point, I'm glad you said that. You always want to keep your batteries warm. Don't like, I've seen some really mess up their drone and malfunction and quickly overheat if they're not on room temperature, because of whatever is inside of it. I had a guy tell me one time he had one explode because it was too cold outside and it put too much power to it too quickly, and it caught on fire on him. So you always want to make sure, like I have mine in my car, and I make sure that it's either inside, then I carry it out, and then I keep it pretty warm in the car before I try to fly it, even when it's just like 45 degrees. And I don't fly this one in the rain, but now they do make some, like the Inspire, you can fly in a drizzle. The Mavic, you can fly in a drizzle. They had some that were completely waterproof over at the last Hazard Conference. Y'all, if you're really interested in that, that's an excellent conference to attend.
This is the college?
Yeah, it's at the technical college. It's the USA Drone Port is the one that provides it.
And in summary, a comment from Jaquita: it sounds like the drone could be helpful on the farm at all seasons for gardening, checking fences, weathering, etc. Fascinating and endless possibilities.
Pretty much. That's what I think.
All right, any other questions for Summer about drones?
Great job.
I'd love to have one.
And it's growing and growing and growing. And 6 months from now, the technology is going to be so much more advanced than it is right now. We'll have to do another one probably.
Jerry wants to put a carbon fabric on it so that it absorbs the radar signals.
Hey, Jerry.
Excuse me. A question on the cost while we're on the subject. Like with a lot of technology, over time, you see the prices start coming down. Are we seeing that with the drone prices, or are they starting to drop some?
I know you asked me a question. I was answering Jaquetta. Could you ask me that again?
Yes. Can you hear me okay now?
I can.
Okay. With all technology, it starts out very expensive, and over time, we see the prices come down. Are we starting to see a trend in the drone prices? Are they coming down somewhat?
Yes.
Become more popular?
Yes, this Phantom, I got it 2 years ago, and like I said, it was right under about $4,000. Now you probably can get the same unit for about $3,000. So like your batteries are your most expensive thing. I never see a change in the batteries.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you all for tuning in, and Summer, thank you again for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
This will be recorded. This will be on the YouTube channels and on the Kentucky and the Virginia side.
And I emailed that PowerPoint. If y'all want those references or any of that information, I emailed it to Phil. So he just asked him for it.
Okay. Shad and Jeremy, you all have any closing comments?
Great job, Summer. Thank you.
Really
Thank
good.
you all. Bye.
Bye. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
What's on tap for Thursday? Phil, Dad?
We'll be talking about backcountry navigation and communications on Thursday evening, using a map and compass, the basics of that, as well as some other topics.
Sounds good. Definitely looking forward to it. Looks like we got a great information. We'll give you a tidbit of information. Shad, Phil, and I sat down yesterday and planned out some things through the end of October. So should be some great stuff going on into the fall.
Very diverse. So if you haven't liked some of them, I think eventually